Gosh, hello. How are you?
I'm not bad. Yeah, it feels weird.
It does. It feels a little bit. It feels weird now being in the same city as you, but still using Discord, but knowing that you're sat just kind of generally. I mean, still far away from me, but like contextually a bit closer.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, I was trying to think, right? Like, has anything changed since last time we were on?
Quite a lot.
And actually, yeah, quite a bit. My initial reaction was like, "Oh, there's gonna be nothing. Like, what is there to say?" But
I mean, that
for
would have
you
been really
especially,
disappointed if we'd have come back and we've been like, sorry, sorry everyone up top that we've been away for so long. There was no reason. Nothing's changed.
there's no excuse whatsoever.
I think a fair amount has happened for both of us. I mean, you moved flat since we recorded
Yeah,
last, right?
yeah. So I've moved in with Hannah. So, which I'm getting my podcast head on. Where,
Yeah, speak to the audience.
yeah, exactly.
Should we do the up top like, hey everyone listening, who's probably not listening anymore because well, sometimes when things end for like an indeterminate amount of time, people just disappear into the reeds. But if you're joining us again, sorry for the gap. We were busy.
Yeah, that pretty much summarized it.
Yeah, I mean, I can give a rundown of why, but I don't know if you want to run down. Sorry, I interrupted you telling the story of your move.
Well, I've not got much of a story really. I moved in with Hannah, and this is my
Yeah,
first time doing it from here. And
it
I'd
sounds
love to say
okay.
that was my excuse, but to be honest, like it's not really. It's yeah, I'll blame it all on you, really.
It's been me. It has been me. It has been me. So yeah, for everyone listening who doesn't already know, so okay, putting aside the people that we know in real life, if there's anybody out there who listens to this who doesn't actually know us, I've moved jobs and moved cities, and that all happened like quite rapidly at the end of September, start of October last year. And then there was a period of time where I was staying with a friend, so I didn't have like a place of my own to record in, and I didn't have my like usual computer, like editing setup, recording setup, etc. And then I think it was at the start of November I got a flat, but said flat had absolutely horrifically bad internet that it was like slow to even load an email. So recording was kind of off the cards then. And I've only just managed to get new internet put in. And then also life's just busy, especially because like the city I've moved to is London. So I'm now living in London with Ronan. Not with Ronan, but in the same city as Ronan. And yeah, so it's all just been very, very hectic. And but we've been wanting to come back and do an episode again and kind of get things going again. Although I think it's probably worth mentioning up top that based on Ronan suggested this, and I thought is quite a good idea. Is that based on how busy everything is at the minute? Like I'm going to have less time to edit the episodes, or rather, I'm going to need more time to do it. So we're thinking we're going to move from a bi-weekly a rough bi-weekly schedule, which obviously we haven't kept up in the last couple of months. But still, last year it was roughly once every 2 weeks that we did an episode. I think we're going to move to once a month, and that's just going to give us a little bit more breathing room, and hopefully means that we can keep up a rhythm in the same way that we were before. But yeah, I think we just need a little bit more of a gap because we both have full-time jobs and hobbies and social lives and everything. So it's quite tricky to fit everything in, but we're keen to keep doing this because it's fun, even if no one's listening anymore. If there ever was anyone listening,
That's the apologetics for the
yeah.
hardcore listeners out there.
Welcome back. We're sorry. We love you. I can't promise we'll never leave again, but we'll try. I did do like a little, it's still up, but I think I'll probably get rid of it because I kind of lied in it. I did when I was staying at Charlie's, I recorded a little like mini clip on my phone. I don't know if you saw it. It
Yeah,
was
I did.
basically like, oh, a little mini update. We're just in between things at the minute. But I think I like massively underestimated how long it would take to get set up again. And I also promised that the next episode would be Nickelback. That's a lie. because we wanted to come back and have Ronan share ones that's kind of been hinted at for the past year or so. Actually, I think since we begun, you've mentioned wanting to cover this album. So
Yeah, quite probably.
I thought
yeah.
it'd be quite nice to kind of come back and stretch our legs and dust the cobwebs off, just the two of us kicking it old school, bringing it back. and then Ronan able to take us away with an album that he loves. But yeah, I think that's everything to catch people up, I guess.
Catch people up on the lore.
Yeah.
Can we have a lore? Can our like lives just be like like gorillas or something? I don't know whether that's or
Just the exciting things that we do, or do we want to pretend? You want to make up like false narratives? Do you want to pretend that we've been like away in space or something these past couple of months?
I was kind of thinking of just the really mundane stuff, but calling it a lore to make it sound like it's exciting going out to space stuff. But I'm not sure how easy that one's going to be to sell.
I mean, we've been gone long enough. We could come up with any excuse, really. We went backpacking around the Andes and expanded our mind. Yeah, it just makes it sound a little more interesting than a move to a big busy city in winter and just been busily adjusting lives essentially and dealing with rats.
Oh yeah, we don't have to talk about rats.
Yeah, to talk about rats. That can be the implied law,
I mean, I wonder if I can. I don't know whether Hannah would be happy with me telling rat stories.
But the rat stories can be. It's like when we did the episode with Tom, when we did Dr. Dre, and we were talking about the room, and the room is just this mysterious.
Yeah.
It's implied, but it's never explicit, so it's left up to the listener's imagination.
Yeah,
in the same way that the rats. I mean,
Hannah might want it similarly dubbed over in the same kind of way, but then if it is, it's just going to sound like Hannah's.
That's going to sound so dodgy.
Horrendous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I want to tell the story because I've like got it ironed out into a full story, but I think I'll leave it because I think genuinely Hannah wouldn't.
Maybe you can check.
With it being broadcast so broadly.
You can get it cleared with Hannah for next episode.
I can try my best.
How have you been? I mean, I saw you on Saturday in the flesh, although I feel like we didn't really get a proper catch up, to be fair, because you never really do at parties. It was just kind of like float around between people. And
it already kind of properly got going by the time we were
you
there.
rocked up late. So. You'd been at a fancy meal.
Yeah, because all of Hannah's, well, not all of them, one of Hannah's original crew, paralegal crew, is a full-fledged lawyer now. So it's all.
That's really exciting.
Yeah, becoming very real.
Is it on the horizon for the other paralegals in the group? Or is it?
Oh yeah. No, like the three of them, the three musketeers, as I like to call them. They're like all on. You what? Sorry.
You said you come up with that one yourself.
Yeah, it's just this subtle thing.
It's quite original, that one.
Like a little illusion. Like not many people know it. Like it's just this little known French writer. Like
I
think he's called Alexander Dumas. You probably wouldn't know him. I've completely lost where I was going with that.
That's fine. I lost you.
There was some mad shit at that party. Maybe not one for actual podcast content, but the fact that like half the party listened to this podcast, it seems. I would love just to be able to talk more openly about on here. But
I mean, that said, I don't think that many people we know still listen. I think towards the end of the run, who's to say from now? Because we're in uncharted territory. I've not looked at the stats at all since while we've been on hiatus, so I don't know how decimated our community is. But towards the end, more people that I knew would apologize for not listening. Like be like, "Oh, I've not listened in ages. Actually, like I've not. I'm sorry." I'm like, "Oh, that's okay," because we still have. Because according to the stats, we still had like a solid listening base. which led me to believe that there are some people out there who just genuinely like to listen. I mean, obviously your parents, solid
Just
fan
listening on
base.
repeat. That's so interesting, though. That is kind of interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, when we started, it was definitely like a couple of friends just being like, supportive and giving it a chance. But I think as we went on, I think
We
we
need to
grew.
foster that word of mouth community.
Yeah, need to. Well, I've got some stickers that I printed off ages ago, like fly stickers. I printed them off maybe like the week before we did our last episode, and I've just had them. And I'm like, well, I can't. There's no point putting them in pub toilets because the link doesn't go to anything because we've not done any episodes. But from now, I'll give you your share, and we can go and.
Is this like QR code?
Yeah.
That's such a London thing. That's like
some guerrilla marketing.
Yeah, let's.
So I'll give you a wad, fill your wallet. People think, man, this guy's packing. Really?
I thought
you get to the toilet and slap it on like a urinal.
I thought you were talking about having printed like fan club stickers. And I was ready to say I would single-handedly pay postage to anybody that's like not somebody we know who gets in touch to say they listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
And I will personally send a sticker to you. Now I know that they're not fan club stickers. That kind of
have you taken the offer
that takes away from that. But I'll
create
personally send something. I'll figure that out.
Just like somebody can get in touch. That you found in there.
A signature. I'll get my autograph in. Just get in before we're famous.
I mean, did you enjoy? Speaking of the party, the little the parasocial relationships that were going on. A bunch of people being like, Ronan, it's me. We did this episode together. And you're like, I don't remember. I don't know who you are.
It was initially overwhelming. Suddenly having to sort of calibrate like voices and like people having talked about things in a very specific context to like real life. I think it suddenly made me realize just quite how disembodied the process is here. But it was actually really lovely. It was nice to actually feel like I sort of vaguely knew a lot of people there, even though it was in that sort of odd context.
It's interesting because you end up spending this like intimate hour together, almost hour and a bit, discussing something that matters to them, like quite a lot, And it's almost like an accelerated date where you're cutting out all the small talk and you're just getting straight to the nitty gritty of like, what's your interests? But it's that fleeting moment, and then you meet them later, and you're like, "Ooh, I don't actually know anything else about you."
It's like a really crude therapy session, and then any anonymity kind of just goes out the window.
Give me an outpouring of your soul. I think we can go from there and make you give you an outpouring of your own soul. That doesn't work as a sentence, I don't think.
It does work, yeah. I am ready to be forced to give an outpouring of my soul. Let's do it.
More of something else entirely.
Return of the Sting. The Return of the Sting.
Return of the Sting. Okay. I mean, yeah, do you want to take point on this? Because this is not only... I think there's a little... no pressure, but there's a little bit of pressure. Because not only this is your album pick, this has been like your like sort of like ultimate album pick almost. That might be putting a bit too much stake on it, but you know what I mean. This has been like hinted at. It's part of the law. Right? It
is part of the law. And like you say, it's come up a lot. Actually, not even just in this podcast, but I really remember, and I'm pretty sure you were there for this, sitting on yours and Sam's roof in third year.
Yeah.
Just so nobody panics, it wasn't like high up.
It was a flat roof.
It was
It's
a
like
very
a
safe
flat
roof.
garage roof.
Fact,
Yeah.
I actually think technically it was the neighbour's roof, but it was accessible from your garden, and
Accessible might be a bit of a stretch.
basically we got on the roof, and
We got on
that's
the
the
roof.
key. Actually, it's not even a key part of the story. That's a real tangent already. But keeping on that tangent, I have a distinct memory in third year of sitting on that roof and somebody suggesting doing that free song game where you put on 3 of your favourite songs, put them on a playlist, shuffle the playlist, and everybody has to guess who put on the song.
Yes,
And I
yeah.
remember putting on Modern Leopard, the opening track,
Mm.
this album, and at that point, really already, I wasn't listening to that much else, kind of like Frightened Rabbit. I used to listen to a bit more. I
Yeah.
wasn't listening to that much else, and so nobody got it. Basically, nobody got it when I put it on. But it's always been something there that like just occasionally I'd mention way back to like uni and sort of school when I was listening to it. It's like anybody that's known me, it's somebody that something that I may easily have just kind of mentioned in passing as this kind of like thing that means a lot to me.
Mm.
But very few people actually know much about them. It's not something that I've played to people. It's not something that I kind of talk about regularly. Just it's just something that's slipped in there.
I didn't know what to expect sound wise going in, because again, you mentioned it, and like you say, you played Modern Leopard, but like I didn't recognize it when it came, and I can see why when you put it on, nobody was like, "Oh, this is clearly Ronan's," because like you say, it's not similar to anything that I would like associate you with now, but I can definitely see finding it in an earlier era and like latching onto it. I can see why you still love it now, if that makes sense.
So I think that's all the context that kind of I want to give, and then I've kind of tried to bring together some thoughts to kind of do the usual introduction of picking it that sort of goes into a bit more detail than all of that. And I was struggling to do so in a way that wouldn't just end up covering probably everything we're going to end up talking about. So realistically, here's a series of points that we'll probably end up circling around repeatedly. But I think first of all, and this has already been kind of hinted at by that introduction to the introduction, there is the kind of personal connection with Frightened Rabbit. That's a really kind of important part of them. And I sort of got into them because like our whole family were all into like a bit of this sort of Scottish indie scene. It was like a whole thing in like in sort of the noughties, I suppose, but kind of goes back to like, probably goes back even further than this, but in fact definitely goes back further than this. But this strain of the Scottish indie scene, I think, could be at least tracked back to Arab Strap, who are another band that could do a whole thing on. But the key thing about them is that they just had this brilliant stripped back kind of performance style, almost like beautiful punk, I suppose, in a sense that they were still making kind of gorgeous tunes at points, but it was essentially like a guy on a guitar, a drum machine, and a guy rambling about the night out they'd had the night before or whatever, and rambling in a thick Scottish accent. And that's like this kind of like this key part that sort of, and it goes on to influence all parts of the sort of Scottish indie scene. I mean, there's like Bell and Sebastian, who I actually haven't listened to too much of, but are really quite big. And like their album, The Boy with the Arab Strap, is named after Arab Strap. And there's other bands that I just have to kind of shout out as well whilst I got the opportunity, like We Were Promised Jetpacks and Twilight Sad. And I think We Were Promised Jetpacks were actually the in because they, like one of the guitarists was like the son of a guy who was in an 80s kind of post-punk band called TV21, which was like my first ever favorite band. And like I actually got in touch with them way back then and kind of had like these back and forths with them, went to see them.
Oh, no way.
Because they'd kind of reformed. So there's all sorts of connections there. There's certainly a connection there that goes all the way from TV21, my first ever favorite band, to like Frightened Rabbit, who were like this really, really formative band. So there's that kind of element of the connection. There's the teenage emotions element of the connection. It came at just the right time where you're feeling everything with such intensity. And this is the band, and within that, the album that captures all of that. And then something that we'll kind of return to in more detail, but that's also kind of really impactful was Scott's death, the singer's death.
Mm.
And I won't go too much into that now because I'm sure we'll return to it. But that was kind of quite an impactful moment, probably the kind of most I've ever been impacted by, anybody's death with whom you have that kind of parasocial relationship, I suppose.
Yeah.
But then there's also kind of more to it in that I think I'd be willing to sort of stand by it all still. It's not like something that I've kind of had that connection to when I was young, and it therefore holds all that nostalgia.
Yeah.
And that's where its power lies. I think that there is just this genuine case that it, Frightened Rabbit and this album in particular just does something that I've just not ever quite been able to find anywhere else since.
Yeah.
And I think a huge part of that is the kind of just the sheer beauty of these melodies, almost kind of like naive melodies in a way, and that they're kind of like, they're often sort of simple and sort of very natural, I suppose, because of that. But combined with that kind of really rough singing, the kind of the thick accent, the kind of still, it's not like punk singing, but it's it's rough and it's raw, I think, more than anything else, and a rawness matched by the lyrics, which are raw but at the same time kind of poetic, a poetry that matches the kind of beauty of the melodies. And just nothing. I don't think I've ever been able to find anything that matches that. I mean, like, there's a kind of superficial connection that you could make that I desperately don't want to, but to sort of Mumford and Sons, or that whole kind of like, as in no slight on Mumford and Sons here, but as in that whole kind of country pop, or sort of indie country, I don't know, or alt country, I don't know what you call it, but that whole sort of scene that came about in the 2010s, they would never sing like that, for one thing. And
I was just thinking, I wouldn't have thought, like, now that you've said it, I'm like, okay, I can kind of see like that bare bone connection that I'm sure somebody else might. But like that Mumford and Sons scene never came to me while listening to this album. But now that you've said it, I'm like, oh, I could see why somebody might try and make that comparison. But this feels so disparate from that. And like, what things that popped up to me were it's like a really basic level of like, oh, this certain verse reminds me of another Scottish artist, but it's purely from like hearing that like Scottish accent in like used. Because it's such a distinct sound, and it's a sound that I really enjoy. That it's just I think it's a nice accent to listen to. I know some people don't like Scottish, but I like Scottish, and I like Scottish singing. So like, there were times when certain bits reminded me of other Scottish artists, but even then I was like, but not really. And I didn't want to like mention those connections because I didn't want to then like not insult Frightened Rabbit, but like make that kind of bring them down to the level of these other Scottish artists I know of, or like, I also didn't want to imply that it was the same.
What other Scottish artists were there any in particular, or was it sort of?
It was one in particular, and it was purely accent based. I'm gonna have to quickly remind myself what they're even called. Twin Atlantic.
Oh yeah. Who I've not actually listened to much of.
They're more Mumford and Sons adjacent, and I feel like they it's almost like they're like the sanitized version of Frightened Rabbit. But then again, I don't want to say that because I don't want to put them in the same league, because the only thing is that there's Scottish accents involved, and then like, that kind of like indie melody. But the Midnight Organ Fight feels so much more than just those things, but it's hard to pinpoint because from like an acoustic level, it is a punky, rocky, Scottish voice led indie album.
Well, Twin Atlantic probably I don't know enough about them specifically, but I do remember sort of seeing them knocking about. They probably came out of that same broad coalescing kind of scene. I mean, and scenes, I suppose, are often kind of quite a vague thing, like in that on the one hand, they can be an organic kind of like everybody knows each other kind of thing. Yeah. But they can also be something that's projected onto a group of artists by, say, the music press. And so I don't, and I think the Scottish indie scene that I'm kind of referring to is maybe in part my projection, and in part, like most of these things, I think it's probably a bit of a mixture of that. But I really wouldn't be surprised if they kind of come out of that sort of that similar thing. And in many ways, the uniting identity of all of that was just the unabashed Scottishness of it all.
Yeah.
But also probably strong melodies, I suppose, being kind of like a key component. Sort of unpretentious in that sense. Like it's sort of it's just trying to make good songs.
It feels very real, this album, in a way that when you were saying it, nothing you've quite come across. I think it took me a few listens to feel the same way. I think when I mean, to be fair, even through my first listen, I started to feel that. And then, but by the time I got around, I've listened to it quite a few times since you suggested it. And I definitely agree that like it has a very unique kind of vibe. I don't know how to like place it more than that, because it feels very raw and it feels very emotional and it feels very real and it feels a little bit messy, but in like a artisan way. I don't know if that works, but like almost cobbled together, but like by like a woodworker who knows what they're doing. Like this.
Well,
it's
perhaps like a band in the corner of a pub or a bar who are all sort of capable, but perhaps a little bit drunk.
Yeah, it feels a bit like that, and the lyricism feels like that, and the writing feels like that. But like it's a heartbreak album, but to such an extent that like you feel almost like you can. I don't know. It just feels so much more raw than other heartbreak albums. There's no separation. You are rubbing directly up against what feels like the lead singer's like lived experience in this album.
I think that's exactly, that's a really good description. I think cuts to the core of it. I think, and it's also where I have to admit that distinction I made before between the kind of the emotional argument and the intellectual argument is obviously, when I sort of look at it objectively, hard to separate, because that connection seemed so vivid because I heard it at that age when it would do, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, this would have ruined me as a teenager. I'd have been I'd have been in such a melancholic, angsty phase with this one for sure. I mean, God, like Mumford & Sons was enough to do that to me. I was that. This would have ruined me.
I wasn't even a particularly, I don't think I was a particularly miserable teenager or anything, but I suppose maybe I got my outlet through miserable music. I did serve.
I can't decide if I'd recommend this to somebody who is actively like going through a breakup or had just broken up with somebody. I don't know if it would be too much, or if it would be like cathartic. It's hard to say. There's some really beautiful moments on it that feels like hopeful and reaching past it, but then there's also some moments of just like, God, it's shit, isn't it? It's like going through that.
Yeah, it's it'd be a risky one. I feel like it could go either way. It could either be this beautiful cathartic release, or it could just send somebody down a real dark hole. But I think it does capture the reality of those kind of intense emotions, I think. But that's not necessarily, I suppose, when I was listening to it when I was younger, I didn't necessarily know whether that was the case.
No, yeah.
I just sort of assumed it was the case. Or rather, he manages to communicate it so much that you can imagine yourself having...
Well, I think that's what, in a way, made it interesting to me, is that compared to some albums where... It's interesting because, like I was saying, you do sit very close listening to this, very close to the artist's feelings, but I also feel like this is something the way that this kind of breakup is expressed through this album is something that some people will be able to like viscerally relate to, like they've gone through it almost blow by blow, and there's other people who'll have never had a breakup quite feel the same way as this. I think it's in that sense it's a very personal album. And I think like sometimes you get you know, heartbreak songs and breakup songs that are a bit more like generalized, but this feels it's his relationship coming to an end. You feel like you're listening to his catharsis, and not necessarily a shared one, unless you've gone through something similar.
And ironically, in that decision to make it more particular, it almost becomes more universal, or it touches upon something more universal, because I think sometimes some artists, in the effort to, or maybe in just the natural inclination to talk either in the abstract or in the kind of the non-particular, so that it doesn't alienate an audience, so that it can mean anything to anyone, or so that, you know, if you write a love song, the love song could be about anyone, you know. In doing that, it can often actually, that can be the process that alienates, because you've made it so abstract that it no longer connects. Whereas even though this is, as you say, it's an exploration of the particular, and it feels like he's writing about real moments that have happened to him, it is in those real moments, those particular moments, that he strikes something really, really universal. I mean, like an example of that would be Good Arms versus Bad Arms, which is just some incredibly, again, it's going to be a description that comes up time and time again, but it's just a raw guttural emotion.
Yeah.
But there's a line: "I'm armed with the past and the will and a brick," which just in itself is just a beautiful and succinct sort of way to communicate a sort of feeling. But I'm past and the will and a brick. I might not want you back, but I want to kill him. And the way that sort of captures overwhelming hurt, sort of rage and jealousy. I mean, like even if you've never sort of felt it with that intensity, or kind of that spark of jealousy, almost jealousy in itself as an emotion. If you can just understand jealousy, then you can understand that, even if you've not felt that it with that intensity. You know, it's like feeling the most, almost like the platonic ideal of an emotion.
It's a really easy album to empathize with, I think.
Yeah, and I think with that lyric, like, I mean, I've heard, I would say, without getting into details, I think I've heard like sort of third-hand stories that almost exactly replicate
for sure
that kind of line, you know, like exactly replicate it. So it's kind of the simplicity, just with a few words, you know, the past, the will, and a brick. It's the succinctness of it as well. It's all the information you need.
I think I was taken by surprise by like his songwriting. And I think it constantly took me by surprise throughout the whole album, because I think there's this like back and forth between some really, really beautiful and also like really well written and like intelligent and poetic like lines and metaphors and all the good things that fall into this. But then there's also just like, I don't want to say like clunkiness has like a negative implication, but like there's certain flow and rhythm to some parts of the songs, and there's a certain where he just like throws in just like quite a harsh swear word, just like, and it's just like, I've just been like caught off a little bit by it, and it doesn't detract from the song at all, but it grounds it almost. Again, like you say, it feels like somebody who's playing in the corner of the pub, and they're real. And it doesn't feel like sanitized and like it's not been gone over, which then makes the really beautiful and like interesting and clever writing feel more organic as well, because it's all presented in the same stream of like this. It feels like it was written down once and is now being performed almost. Like it feels like it came straight from, you know, straight from the heart, I guess, would be. But like from a central outpouring of emotion or feeling or like reflection, because a lot of it feels very reflective, and he's sat down and he's written it, and it's like raw and ready, and that's just how it is, and then you get served that, and it just, yeah, it really, and that's what I think makes it difficult to compare to something like you mentioned Mumford & Sons earlier, because Mumford & Sons feels a little bit more like they've done drafts. This doesn't feel like there's any drafts. If that makes sense.
No,
I don't know.
That does make sense. That makes a lot of sense. And actually, if yeah, and I love that it sounds like they've made drafts. I think is kind of I think that captures it. And to take like a song that I think the entirety of the song almost just embodies what you've described. I think Backwards Walk does
I love Backwards
all
Walk.
of this as a song. So it like it starts with the sort of the poetic musings, the kind of working on my backwards walk. I'm trying to claw things back, and it's got sort of the lines like shoes keep sticking to the floor, and I don't know, like all this kind of stuff, and it's slowly, it's all this toying with the kind of like, yeah, do I return to this kind of relationships of take me back, don't take me back, all these kind of things, until and with that the music behind it kind of builds, and this is a really common kind of technique that I think they use incredibly well, is the kind of crescendoing song, the song that builds up to a finale, and so it goes with all that kind of poetics of reflection, and then just suddenly climaxes into the sudden vulgarity that you were kind of talking about, you're the shit and I'm knee deep in it, it's I mean, just what an incredible sort of statement, and a bluntness, after all that kind of just I don't know. Sorry, I'm sort of at a loss for words there, but it's just incredible. I'm looking up the lyrics to Backwards Walk as well, just to see if I can.
I love the line that's like, my clothes won't let me close the door because the trousers seem to love your floor.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly the one I was looking for.
Really visceral descriptions of almost like listening to the song, I'm like picturing him like being trapped and like being like, like when you put your hand in like a glue trap or something like that, relatable, but we all know what it looks like, and you try and pull away and there's just those strings, those goops of string. That was like kind of the mental image that kept reoccurring in my head in the first part of the song, was like him attempting to leave this person, and he just was being dragged back by these goopy strings, until the mental image then devolved into him being knee deep in a lake of shit, which also drives home the same point.
Yeah, and sorry, just looking back at the lyrics now as well, and it's sort of I suppose the Backwards Walk feels like it sort of actually covers so much, because it's wanting to rewind time, it's wanting to actively get out of the sort of the pull of the relationship, and it's the kind of the toying with the idea of returning to the relationship, and it's all of these things at once, and all of those contradictory feelings at once, and and that in itself is just sort of,
it might be a perfect song.
I genuinely think it might be a perfect song. I'm fine with hyperbole on this podcast, but I don't think that even is hyperbole. I think that's a legit statement. Kind of circling back a little bit to where to make comparisons with other artists, I kind of had a couple of other artists that I thought were worth kind of bringing into it, actually, and one of them is The National, who I think there is there's a musical similarity with at points, and also a similarity for me in terms of, I started listening to The National quite a lot not long after, and I loved The National as well. And there's also, I believe, the producer on this album, Peter Kattis. I'm not sure that that's how you pronounce his name. I'm just confirm this correct. I think he also produced some of The National's biggest albums at the time, and I'm just checking that that's correct, because it was, so Peter Kattis has been involved on pretty much all of the National albums, in fact, but he produced sort of Boxer, for example, which was like their biggest album at the time when I was kind of listening to them, and there's a similarity there, but I mean, and I like to think more so than the Mumford and Sons one, but it stops again. But in there's a sort of cool, even though the National used to sort of make me feel things too. I mean, it still make me feel things, but they used to kind of make me feel things in that sort of teenagery way. But there is ultimately a kind of a cool detachedness to the National. There's, I mean, like Matt Berninger as a lyricist really does that kind of like abstract lyricism, which I love, and he also has moments of poetry that really kind of hit in a different way. But there is a sort of a bit more of a kind of a polish to that, or a sort of cool, almost maybe standoffishness. I don't know.
It's a bit of a performance as well, isn't it? A bit of a mask on. These are our stage. Whereas this Frightened Rabbit album feels. I think the phrase is a heart on sleeve.
Yeah. I think so. But I just wanted to kind of highlight that, just to bring out that sort of where it differs. But then I thought, I was trying to think of who actually has that rawness, that has that sort of rawness of spirit, whilst also kind of like having all this musical talent, all this stuff kind of wrapped up together in the kind of big bold melodies. And actually, even though I've never really been able to get into him that much, I kind of think there's a Sam Fender connection as well.
Oh,
if you listen to, is it 17 and Under? What's the his really big track? There's a kind of similarity with something like Modern Leper, and I'm not sure how committed I am to that. I've never really been able to get into Sam Fender. I've not quite been able to put my finger on why that is. And my little like theory that I pulled up when I was thinking about this was just that maybe it is because there's this similarity, and so it's like I've got my Frightened Rabbit. I don't.
You found them, yeah.
But in terms of the way that like Sam Fender sings with the accent coming through, and he's a great singer, but there is also a kind of, I think maybe a bit of like a kind of roughness to it. It could be Boy in the Pub kind of singing.
It always feels a lot less like Hollywood when it's somebody with an accent, and I'm wondering what that says about us as audiences.
Well, yeah, we used to kind of either American accents or just kind of London accents.
Poshos from the south,
yeah.
Yeah. And then it always seems to be the ones that really connect with people tend to be have their own very distinct style, but they're not as easy to churn out, I guess. I did want to ask you, do you remember like how you first came across like Frightened Rabbit, or like did somebody show you it? Was it like a kind of a natural discovery yourself?
I don't remember the first time explicitly, other than that my family listened to them basically. And like I say, I think the connection was we found out about. Well, I think there was this connection, but there might have been other routes as well. Like you sometimes hear about things from multiple sources, and then that's what prompts you to then eventually check them out, kind of thing. But I think it was that connection via We Were Promised Jetpacks, who were in turn we found out about because of the listening to TV21. And then sort of discovering that Scottish indie scene, you just kind of get some of the people who are at the forefront, and Frightened Rabbit were kind of one of them. And Midnight Organ Fight, I think, is just, I mean, its reputation seems to, when I was looking online, it actually got a really substantial Wikipedia page, which I know isn't the kind of the only measure of success, but it may as well be for me.
I don't know. There's a really good video on YouTube that was discussing the American Idol Disney attraction. And to do so, they went through and talked about the whole history of American Idol. And when they were going through, they were talking about like how you can see the interesting history of musical solo artists, but also supergroups. And he was rating supergroups based on how many of their individuals within the supergroup had their own Wikipedia article.
Sure.
So it was like Destiny's Child A+, and then it would be like something else you'd never heard of, and it like only one of them had a Wikipedia page, and you're just like F.
It's a good litmus test. It's a good litmus test. I tend to find, I mean, like you get the occasional thing that like has such importance in its own little community, and then seems to have no presence anywhere else,
Yeah.
including Wikipedia.
Us-
That obviously happens sometimes, but Wikipedia is a genuine litmus test for success. Okay, I'm gonna double
Yeah.
down on it.
That's why neither of us have a Wikipedia page.
Well, you never know. Someday it can
Not yet.
inspire.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's sort of its stature's only grown over the years. But back then, I think it would have been the first Frightened Rabbit album. I think that probably my dad sort of got it, but I'm sure they'll be able to correct me if I'm wrong. And yeah, I guess it is probably all of that era when I'd have had my iPod Nano, and so would just raid the CD
man.
collection.
Amazing.
And upload them, or raid the iTunes and kind of load it all onto the iPod Nano. So pick out the stuff. I guess I don't know how I'd pick out stuff that I liked. I guess there'd be things that probably just my parents were playing a lot of, and then that would then lead me to from within that, so pick out the ones that I particularly liked. Yeah, and Frightened Rabbit. And Frightened Rabbit probably sort of crossed over from about iPod Nano era to Spotify era. When I was most listening to them, it was quite a while. It was probably from about, I don't know, I'd guess like from about 13 to 18, I guess I'd say it sort of held that status as probably my favorite band, and still kind of it will always hold that emotional connection 100%.
Do you still return to them like often, or is it like every now and again you have a little trip down memory lane and have a little play of it and have those like nostalgia feelings, but they're not on regular rotation? Like, do you put them in playlists and stuff still, or?
Not really, actually, and actually, the occasional song, but not. For example, actually, I got really into Snake, which is on the album before this, and actually, there's a connection, like partly because for whatever reason, that song felt like it could fit into a lot of my playlists a lot better, a lot more easily. But interestingly, Snake tells the story of like going out to New York to sort of try and to visit a girlfriend, try and mend relationships, of all that kind of stuff. And it's then mirrored in I Feel Better, the second song on Midnight Organ Fight, which uses the same melody and is all about coming back from sort of New York.
Oh, no way.
Or certainly sort of, the post-relationship, and suddenly realizing, no, you know
Frightened
what?
Rabbit lore.
Yeah, Frightened Rabbit lore there. But that's a little aside. But generally not so much. And actually, I don't listen to them that often. And it's probably like partly I just moved on sort of musically, and you sort of move on from artists all the time, I suppose. But also, I think after this is probably where I can sort of talk a little bit about Scott the singer's death. Almost, I think this might need to be the first trigger warning we've had on the podcast, because it's it does get kind of essentially. I think after his death, I probably listened to them a lot less after that, because suddenly the intensity of listening to them was almost just. It wasn't even like a cathartic sort of relieving intent. It was just too much. And Scott died basically jumping off the fourth bridge, which he sings about in a way that becomes kind of eerie now. At the end of this album, it was clearly something that he'd thought about a lot, and so this was like 10 years later more. So it's clearly something that sort of, just if he was in a dark place, he must have just returned to.
Yeah.
And like I say, I think that hit hard.
It's weird listening to that song.
It's an incredibly powerful song as well. It's actually also just one of the most, just ironically, even though there's a kind of moroseness to it, it is actually one of the most affirming songs about choosing life, I suppose. And part of its power is probably in the fact that it doesn't just sort of work like going, well, actually everything's okay again and life's worth living for. It just says, I'll put it off.
Yeah.
I'll put it off.
Yeah. I'll keep working on things and pushing through for now. But yeah, like you say, it's very the fact that it all feels very, like you say, like thought out like this is the way that he always knew he'd go, almost, if he was going to go down the route of suicide, which he unfortunately did. The fact that it's almost like it was always going to be in the fourth.
Yeah.
It's a lot, and it's especially a lot for like I imagine for you as a fan, having kind of grown up with it while he was alive, because obviously it's a different experience for me returning to an artist, or like discovering an artist after they've gone, and it's all kind of part of the story. I think like we can all relate to that, because most of us, when we listen to Nirvana, we didn't live through Kurt Cobain killing himself. We knew that going into it, so it adds that extra dimension to the music. So when I listen to this, and it's like the same with when you listen to Mac Miller. Like I didn't come to Mac Miller until after he died, so it was like you go back and you listen to it, and it's all kind of, it's almost like how people, we humans, we love to form a narrative, and it kind of fits into this very quite grim.
We've talked about it before, where it can almost be romanticized, in a sort of in an unfortunate way. But
like it all worked in this depressing story arc almost, but like obviously, like for you, this was somebody who, when you listen to this album the first time, is fighting these demons, and hopefully, like you say, it is quite a hopeful song. So you're hoping that they're winning.
And like you say, you feel like you were saying earlier, you feel let in on those very personal thoughts. You feel kind of invited into them. I forget exactly how you described it, but there's no barrier between you and the singer, and so it does feel very intimate. And I think that because they were small enough that added to that connection, but they were big enough that there was still a community that then responded in the kind of days when he went missing. And there was a lot of activity online. I actually had a mate at school who, I wasn't sort of crazy close to him, but we'd just talk occasionally about music. We both sort of liked The National, and I found out he liked Frightened Rabbit. And he messaged me at the time just saying, can't believe about Scott, so hope they find him, or something like that. It was this kind of real, it had that sort of, they were big enough that there's this community where you also share that with a lot of other people you also don't know, but it's it's that somehow adds to the power. So through that, I can really it's probably the thing where I can empathize now why sort of celebrity deaths kind of they can really hit people. They can hit people in a really hard way, and it's fascinating, really, actually, that it can. That's something that sort of one could say ought to be so distant, just isn't. But it's probably haven't got anything more eloquent to say on that. But it's an important part of that kind of that relationship to the band, I think, to acknowledge.
Sorry, I didn't want to like interrupt you while you were going with that, but I hope you're okay.
Sorry.
It is heavy, and I think it's interesting, like you say, like, so I think some people don't understand that celebrity connection. But I think unfortunately there's a lot of things in the world that like people don't appreciate until it happens to them. And I think having a particular celebrity that you're not, you don't, it's not even that you necessarily feel like them or you're close to them or anything like that, but it's just somebody that you were in sometimes without even realizing, like subconsciously invested in, and then it's like it's always a tragedy.
And probably all of these things get tied up with all sorts of so many other things, like as in for a lot of those things probably get tied up with a sense of having lost a part of your childhood, or whatever else, which sounds kind of horrible to say because there is a person at the center of it, but there's all these other factors that almost certainly sort of come into it, or
get connected on.
I think generally moment, like as a society, or rather as individuals, sorry, like when confronted with death, it 1,000,001 connections around death are kind of made, and so every death you've ever sort of experienced becomes kind of tangled with one another. I think that's quite a sort of common thing. So I've just continued on the morose theme there, but
well, I can ask you a question to
I'm ready for it. Yeah.
Going for a lighter conversation topic is obviously coming back to the album now with like this the history of it all is tough, but like, do you remember, is there any particular memories you have listening to this back in the day that like fond memories? Is there any like particularly fond memories from back when this was like your primary go-to band or go-to album?
I think probably just, we've talked a lot about the staring out the car window kind of music.
Yes, yeah.
Which is interesting. I think the reason it's come up so much on the podcast is probably because that quite neatly captures music that has an emotional impact on you. And it seems to be quite a universal way in which music that has an emotional impact on you is experienced, at least certainly for like people's kind of memories as a teenager or whatever.
I think a large part of it is because you don't want to be doing anything else when you're listening to it. You want to be absorbing the music.
It's true,
and then absent-mindedly staring somewhere. And if you're going to be staring somewhere, might as well be out the window, and then you feel a little bit like the main character in a movie.
Which is an important. Well, and talking of which, so like Modern Leper, I always remember I wanted to have like a. Basically, I used to sometimes listen to like songs, and I'd like match them up in my head of like where they'd go in
the movie of your life. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to sometimes listen to songs, and I would sort of imagine like how they would fit at the end of some kind of equally imagined TV show.
Yes, yeah.
And I always had like this thing drawn out in my head for Modern Leper that it would be like, because I wanted like a sitcom about sort of the locals at some bar out on and like Outer Hebrides Island. I'd think about it when I was out there on holiday with the family, and I always thought that the ending of that sitcom would have one of the main characters who was always the outsider on the island, who had kind of, taken a while to get sort of accepted into the sort of inner circle, and then, by the end of the series is firmly embedded within the inner circle, would have this moment where he's supposed to be leaving the island or whatever, and he'd be driving away and this song would be playing, or would be on like, driving away or on the bus, I can't remember, and like you think like
on the bus looking out the
window, exactly,
like he's in a movie,
and then it would get to like kind of like, do you know the ending of Gavin and Stacey where there's like a moment and they don't stick on it long, but there's like a moment where Smithy decides to take the other road to go to the wedding, basically, without giving spoilers for well, I mean, very much giving spoilers for anybody that's not seen that, but basically it was something like that. So it's this guy, he's supposed to be leaving the island, and then all you see is that he goes a different way, and that would be the end. That he's chosen to stay, and that's kind of
nice.
So that's a happier memory. So thinking about these kind of sweet, sentimental endings to TV shows that could be set to Rabbit.
I love that. Must be such a common thing, because like I can fully relate to that, and I imagine most people did. I would imagine there's a study into that or something. I think that's fascinating. That like I've never really thought about it on the zoomed out perspective of it, but the fact that a good chunk of our generation, if not all teenagers ever, have well, not all teenagers ever, because like what did they dream about before making a cheesy ending to a TV show? And like what influenced us to do that? Like which TV shows did we grow up that did that? Like when did that come about? How universal is it? I don't know. That's just really interesting, because I feel like we all listen to like sad, sappy indie music and imagine the endings of TV shows.
I think
like,
while
looking out the window.
I guess we just grew up with, like, in the noughties, it was really common to have, say, sitcoms, and, all these kind of things with these kind of sentimental endings. So you're just sort of fed by your influences, I guess. And I like to think that as a species, I suppose we're just creatively minded, so we constantly do that, where we kind of take
I'd like to
we
hope
take
so.
those influences, and so I don't know, like in back in Jane Austen's day, people would have been
Can they imagine the ending to plays?
yeah
and
staring out
operas?
the carriage and imagining Mr. Darcy getting
And this would be the bit where the fat lady sings.
exactly that. I'm sure that was kind of I'm sure some version of that's always been the way.
I think this would make a beautiful ending to any. I think any show would be lucky to have Frightened Rabbit on the track
That's
list. Should we pick some favorite songs?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I haven't actually thought about what I'll pick, but I might wait to hear what yours are and then fill in the gaps.
Okay. Before we do, just was there anything else that you wanted to touch on, or do you feel like you've done them justice?
God knows whether I've done them justice, but I think I've covered just about everything that came to mind.
We can always return to Frightened Rabbit in the future if we ever feel the need.
I probably have the only more comments I have is probably just to gush about some of the songs, which is a perfect opportunity.
You can do it. Yeah. You can do it in this section. So if I go first, then on my first listen and through to my most recent listens, I really loved Old Fashioned. I don't know if that's it's one of the lesser listened to on the album, but I just thought it was quite subtle, but still in a Frightened Rabbit way. So not like ultra subtle, but and quite melancholy, and I liked a lot of the lyricism in it. I liked the imagery as well, turning just from the get-go talking about let's turn the TV off, like it's killing us, we never speak, there's a radio in the corner, just give me soft static with a human voice underneath. It just all felt I felt placed by it. I could
storytelling,
imagine
I suppose.
And yeah, that's the way to describe it in a more succinct way. The storytelling was lovely in it, and it does feel romantic in a nice way. And I suppose like the more modern interpretation would be like, let's turn TikTok off. It's killing us, we never speak. No, I just thought, yeah, that one. I think as well that the fact that where it comes in the track list is that you've got, like you're saying, there's quite a lot of like bombastic. In the sense of like a lot of these songs have like they build up to a crescendo, and old fashioned felt a lot more kind of just like that kind of more stripped back, simpler song, especially where it kind of lands in the track list. Because I feel like the Modern Leper, I Feel Better, Good Arms versus Bad Arms, they all feel very grand to some extent or another. Obviously touching on like what we were talking earlier about the tragedy of it, but I did like Floating in the Fourth. I think it is quite a beautiful song, tragically so, with the context of everything that happened. But I think it's pretty gorgeous, and it's really hard. I always struggle with picking because I really like all of them. I think I might go with Good Arms versus Bad Arms. Oh no, I changed my mind. Backwards Walk. That Backwards Walk is because, as we said earlier, it's a perfect song. So I can't not pick it. And I think it is. Yeah. Those are my top three. I could have changed my mind quite a lot. I'm just looking at the track listing with Spotify open, like, oh, but heads are all off. Oh, but the twist. I really like the twist as well. I think it's quite. Anyway, I'll stop. You need to go.
It's this is exactly going to be my stress, I think, trying to pick them out. So I think my canon favorites might have to be the Modern Leper, because it really was my favorite song for quite a long time, and just what a way to open the album.
It has 10 million plays, and they're all you.
Yeah, most likely. It's just a perfect pop song. It takes that Frightened Rabbit formula, in terms of all of those things we've discussed, including the kind of building up to just this, banging sort of crescendo in the final chorus. It just takes all of that and just does it brilliantly, and just got very Frightened Rabbit lyrics like, "Are you a masochist for loving me?" Basically, is the gist of it.
Yeah.
Then I'd also probably say Good Arms versus Bad Arms, and then I'd also say Backwards Walk, which we've discussed all of those. So I'm then going to just throw in some bonus things for the songs that we haven't talked about. Keep Yourself Warm seems to have become just like this real classic. I think it even has the most listens from the album.
It does, yeah.
Genuinely the greatest song about the soul-sucking hollowness of a sort of one-night stand encounter, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's the sort of thing that, like, you know, forget about all the kind of Christian preachers and sort of abstinence talks and all that kind of stuff. Just play somebody that song. I mean, it's you know, it's very much not told from a Christian preacher perspective. That's for sure. But it.
I think that's driven home by, is it the previous track? Is it Heads Roll Off that starts with Jesus is just a Spanish boy's name?
Yeah, exactly that.
So immediately, like, yeah, this guy's not feeling the religion.
And I believe in a house in the clouds. God's got his dead friends round, and he's painted all the walls red to remind them they're all dead. But also, actually, whilst we're on that track, Head Roll Rolls Off, just got to acknowledge that the beautiful line of "Whilst I'm alive, I'll make tiny changes to Earth."
Tiny changes.
For a long while, I thought, I think I'd have that as my funeral song. Now I'm a little bit like, it's probably a bit on the
nose.
but I still think it's sort of beautiful, and yeah, again, it sort of has all that kind of, like, I remember seeing an interview with Scott where he said that opening line is the line he regrets because it is almost too, like, you know, the only line he regrets because it's almost too, like, brash.
It is brash. It is brash. I think it caught me a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that's fair. But it's a gorgeous song. But yeah, Keep Yourself Warm, I think, just it is just such an anthemic exploration of,
you can't get over somebody by getting under somebody.
Exactly. of that theme.
Yeah.
And I think you can extrapolate from it to just in general. You know, I feel like so many artists, including Kendrick with, say, like Swimming Pools, Drank, have tried to sort of tackle that theme of empty hedonism or kind of like connectionless connections with other people. And I think that this is just this should be right at the top of any sort of canon list of songs with those themes.
Yeah, definitely.
Basically. And then also, just got to acknowledge Poke, because for all the songs on the album, actually Poke is probably the one that Poke's probably the only one that could probably make me cry if it got me at the right moment. I think it's very stripped back. It's probably the most stripped back song on the album, and maybe that's part of it. Similar to what you said earlier, I think you get the sense that it is just legitimately him talking about or reflecting upon his own breakup, you know, a very real breakup. There's no sense that it's some kind of breakup in the abstract.
This one also includes what I was talking about earlier about, like, that blunt force trauma of being hit in the head with a swear word. Like, about halfway through of this, like,
the hardest one of all.
The hardest one of all. First time hearing it took me a bit by surprise, you know. Not that I'm offended by the word, just more that you don't. It's very, like, again, it's.
But it uses the offensiveness. You know, it's not.
It hits, like, it's not just thrown out there. It feels, again, it's that visceral, raw emotion of it that makes it feel very human.
Yeah, I think that word, when it's used with its full force, still has the power to shock. It does have the power to shock. I mean, you know, and obviously we've talked before, sort of separately, and, you know, about how it kind of, you know, it doesn't necessarily have that same power. We're talking about the C word, guys. In case I almost don't want to say it, because it almost does still have that power, especially when you're sort of using it. And actually, quick aside, because I don't know when else I'm going to be able to sort of talk about my little, it's not even a theory, just a general interesting tidbit on this. I find fascinating that word not only is sort of has different levels of power, but it almost has completely different meaning in, say, the UK versus America, because the sense I get is that in America, it is essentially a slur for a woman. Like it is specifically like a gendered slur.
Hateful word.
So you
yeah.
wouldn't use it to describe a man. Like you wouldn't, or if you would be saying an effeminate man. I know this because of a Curb Your Enthusiasm clip.
I see. Okay, yeah.
Which I can highly recommend if you just I'm sure you can find it if you look it up. But I find fascinating that clearly it's like, and I'm assuming that that's its origin here, but it is clearly then developed, and so actually like a lot of attention's given to the fact that it doesn't have this same power here, and that it can be used jokingly here and all that kind of stuff. But the key to that, I think, is that it doesn't have slur status here. It is just a bad swear word.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas it has slurs. Anyway, you can edit that out, but I never miss an opportunity to talk about that. But okay, final words before we move on to the quiz. I just want to read out all the lyrics. Well, not all the lyrics, but a little segment from Poke, just to end off on, because we've touched upon some of the lyrics, but I think it's worth just having a little extended sequence just to get a sense of the power of the words. But you got to hear it in the context of the song for it to really hit, of course.
Yeah.
But I'm going to try not to mess this up. But you should look through some old photos. I adored you in every one of those. If someone took a picture of us now, they'd need to be told that we had ever clung and tied a navy knot with arms at night. I'd say she was his sister, but she doesn't have his nose. And now we're unrelated and rid of all the shit we hated, but I hate when I feel like this, when I never hated you. The power of that.
So good. I knew when you were like, let me just read out some of the lyrics, and I literally scrolled to those lyrics because I knew that's what you were going to. Yeah.
And simple still. It is still, it's simple. It's still got that kind of like almost like nursery rhyming structure on the whole.
I think it just shows that like things don't have to be overly flowery or fancy to convey everything that it needs to. It doesn't need to be overwritten. I think that this album is not overwritten. This album is every word is perfectly placed. Every word is perfect.
That's a good point to end on, which means I think, Louis, what time is it?
It's time for the quiz. Do-do-do-do. Do-do. Very nice. Wow, we've still got it.
Yeah. Dusted off the cobwebs by now.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right.
I'm ready to embarrass
I've only
myself.
got three. I've got 3 questions here.
Perfect.
And they tackle frightened,
Mm-hmm.
rabbit, and then frightened rabbit.
Nice. Okay. Cool. I am frightened.
So I got frightened from I looked up frightened facts and TikTok came up. So I decided to get down with the kids and I clicked on TikTok for frightened facts and it was seemingly just a video of somebody having recorded themselves scrolling through an Instagram post and doing so very quickly.
Right.
So you had to pause it to actually see what all the different facts were. But I picked out this fact from it and I've flowered it up a little bit with some.
This is amazing backstory for a fact, for a question.
August 15, an Ohio State University's Big Ear radio telescope picks up an anomalous signal from Sagittarius constellation. The signal appeared to be consistent and at a frequency generally considered to be the most likely sign of extraterrestrial communication, prompting the researcher who discovered it to circle the results and write, "Wow." This wow signal, as it is now known, has never been detected again. What year was the wow signal detected?
Oh no. What's really annoying is I can literally visualize the image with the circle and the wow. Like I've definitely seen that. What year? Do you say what year or what decade?
Yeah, what year?
Oh fuck. Okay. So
I probably should have gone decade, but
I mean, I'm probably still gonna get it very wrong. Let's say, in the hope that it makes me seem cooler, that it was my year of birth, 1997. How far off am I?
Well, you got the final number right.
Oh.
It was 1977.
Oh my gosh. 20 years earlier.
How cool is that, though? I think I feel like that's one of those ones that knocks about on Reddit sometimes. So
Yeah,
I feel like
that's
I
a
had
great
seen
fact.
that before. But it's just mad. I think I've got in me a little bit of a tinfoil hatty kind of like interest in aliens.
Yeah.
Like I think
You believe?
it naturally manages to grab me whenever
I was a
see
little bit
something
concerned when you were like,
spooky like that.
this is a fact that I got off TikTok of an Instagram. I was like, is this going to be like, oh, the Earth is flat and there's an ice wall around it, like kind of
Well,
energy? What year
the
did
other one I was gonna
aliens
do
visit
for it-
George Bush and declare friendship?
The other one I was going to do from it was, which for some reason was included in its list of frightening facts, was the Bronx Zoo had an exhibition called "The Most Dangerous Animal on Earth." What was the exhibition?
Was it just like a dude?
Yeah. It was a mirror.
That is spooky. That's a frightening one. That's pretty funny, to be fair. Fair play, Bronx Zoo.
Do you ever? This is particularly for the podcast, but do you ever? Do you watch Futurama at all?
I love Futurama.
You know,
Yeah.
the magic door. There's a magic door one where they
Oh,
rattle through a load of stuff, and then it's just like it was bad.
Yeah. Oh, so good.
Okay, question 2
Mm-hmm.
on rabbits.
Mm.
The European rabbit has been introduced to every continent on Earth except Antarctica.
Oh, I was really
When do
hoping
we
that was
think
going to be the question. Apart from where? Antarctica. Easy.
When do we think it was introduced to Britain?
Oh my
Not
god.
that Britain's a continent, but you know what I mean.
Man. Man, oh man, oh man. Can I oh my god.
You can talk through your reasoning if that's
The
what
European
you wanna
rabbit.
ask.
That's what it's like.
Yeah.
So
So, as in, that's the standard rabbit. Rabbits,
it's just a standard
and
rabbit.
hares in the UK.
So I
Uh,
believe I'm under the impression. Oh man, these fucking quizzes, man! It's just fucking embarrass you. I'm under the impression that the Romans interacted with rabbits. What a stupid sentence. I'm worried that now they didn't, but like rabbit stew seems to be like a thing. So I want Britain. I don't know. I kind of thought they were always in Britain. I kind of just had that assumption. Maybe I don't know. Let's just pick something like arbitrary, like 2000 BC. No, because like, what if they were there a long time? Okay, I'm just like, yeah, let's just go 2000 BC.
I thought it was Romans too,
Oh,
but
no.
apparently we think it was the Norman conquest.
Really?
There was 1066. Yeah, they're not mentioned in the Doomsday Book.
That's crazy.
Not that I thought that the Doomsday Book would just be casually like.
Oh, by the way, there's rabbits here. Yeah, I thought that was like a list of like the people. Importantly.
Note for historians. By the way, we have rabbits.
There
here
are
now.
rabbits, just so you know.
But interestingly, so the first known written record or first sort of evidence of rabbits being introduced was by the Romans in the Balearic Islands, and it led to like famine because they destroyed all the copse.
Oh.
And they the inhabitants of the Balearic Islands, anyway, they had to like petition Augustus to sort it out. So they sent a load of ferrets over, apparently.
Oh, and then they killed all those rabbits, and the rabbits didn't get to mainland Britain. From
It
there.
seems not. But then I was just going to check because I have a feeling maybe hares were introduced that early.
Maybe, or maybe
Hares are
hares
introduced
are
as well.
natural to the British Isles. Are they
I
local?
don't think they are.
Do we have anything that's
Unless
I
they
like
are.
badgers? They're British.
Here we go. Oh no. Yeah. Hares were introduced in between the 5th and 3rd century BC. So not even by the Romans, though. That means, is it? Is that pre-Romans?
Let's not.
There we go. Anyway, there's no need to. Yeah. No need to. No need to
Let's just say
investigate that
both,
further.
and then I'll edit in whichever's correct. Yes, it is pre-Romans. No, that's the Roman era. There we go. I can use whichever one.
Okay, final question.
Do you want to make a
Hans.
Frightened Rabbit tribute act called Spooky Badger?
Yeah, I'd do it. Go on. Well, so this is bringing it back to the band. Why a Frightened Rabbit called Frightened Rabbit?
Do you know? This is my answer every single question. I've just realised because I think I said this word for word with the first question. Do you know what's annoying? Is I read Frightened Rabbit's Wikipedia page in advance of the episode, and it's on there. However, I read it last week when we were going to be doing it last week, and I didn't reread it for this week because I thought, I got the gist and I would talk about how I felt about the music. It's something to do. Yes, I've remembered. It's come back to me. I think it's like what Scott's mum used to call him when he was little because he was shy.
Exactly that.
Yes.
Exactly that.
Which is an adorable nickname and a great
sweet name.
Inspiration for a band name, actually. It beats a lot of them, I think.
It's like a good antidote to a sort of braggadocio or kind of like really kind of cool, kind of cool and detached sort of name, I suppose.
Yeah.
It's just like, anyway, there we go.
Lovely.
That's
well, thank you. Thank you very much for putting that together, and thank you for finally introducing us all to the Midnight Organ Fight by Frightened Rabbit. I say us all because I'm hoping that people, if anyone listens, will also go away and listen to it because it is a really amazing album. And I think, as you saw from me and Ronan, being unable to choose a favorite song, it's well worth listening to all of them. But I will say, make sure you're in an emotionally okay place. Probably for the best, because it can be a bit of a bit raw, a bit. It could be a bit much, especially if you've just had a breakup. It might be the good cry that you need, or it might tip you over the edge into big sad.
Despair.
So, despair. So treat this one with caution, but it's well worth checking out. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed. You can find us on all your favorite podcasting platforms, including Spotify, Apple Music, Google Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, etc., etc. We're also on YouTube and on SoundCloud. You can also, if you've had any thoughts or feelings about this episode, you can find us on Instagram at More Something Else Entirely, or you can email in at moresomethingelseentirely@gmail.com. Obviously they're quite wordy tags, so you can find our links in the description of this episode, as well as timestamps to jump around. We have timestamps for all of our episodes. Give the podcast a rating if you enjoyed. Maybe find one of the polls or the discussion points underneath the episode and give us some feedback. But yeah, thanks all for tuning in. Have a good one.
The communists have nothing to offer but fat cheeks and eyeglasses and lying policemen. And the capitalists proffer napalm and money in green suitcases to the naked. And the communists create heavy industry, but the heart is also heavy.